Welcome to Cupán Tae. One of the things that has been fascinating me of late is the whole topic of learned behaviour, and the reason that this topic of learned behaviour became of interest was myself and Queen Victoria were having a conversation with a psychologist about the possibility of a misdiagnosis. They informed us that there isn't a misdiagnosis, and then we went and said, well, how come then this person isn't presenting with the problem that is in the diagnosis? To which we were told, because they have overcome it by learnt behaviour. Yeah, oh yes, apparently you can overcome anything as long as you have learnt behaviour. Now, behaviour is this, right? That this person is capable of overcoming their issues. Now, what really fascinates me about this is the question that popped into my mind. Is not everything due to learnt behaviour? From the very day that a child is born, when it cries, it discovers that it gets picked up, it gets loved, it gets nourished, it gets food, it gets its bottom changed, all these things. And so the child goes, okay, aha, if I cry, then I'm going to be picked up, I'm going to be cuddled, I'm going to be fed, might not be changed. Learned behaviour, is it not? I would have thought so. So what is not learnt behaviour? Well, we all know that everyone has a sinful nature, and maybe, us parents wouldn't like to go and take the credit that our children are the ones that we have taught them how to lie or to steal or any of those things. No, they seem to do that very well off their own bat. So we believe. But here's the point. The point is that everything is by us learning from somebody else. Us learning from the way others do things. And that got me thinking, because there's a verse in Scripture which has really been bothering me. And that is where Paul goes and turns around and he says, follow me as I follow Christ. And he says that in 1 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 1. Follow me as I follow Christ. Now, the question that is on my mind is this. Would I go and say to people, follow me as I follow Christ? And as a person who is a church leader, would I encourage my congregations to go and follow me as I follow Christ? But note, Paul goes and puts a little thing in there that is like, as I follow Christ. That's a very important terms and conditions there. But here's my point. Isn't it interesting that when it comes to everything else in life, it's by learnt behaviour, it's by following someone else's example, it's by copying what they do. But when we as people, as Christians, go and think about this, we go, oh, I don't think so. When I went to put it to some of my colleagues in the ministry about the idea of going and making that declaration from the pulpit, or asking them how often they have made that declaration, the answer has been similar across the board, and that is, I'm not the Apostle Paul. No, nor am I. But the Apostle Paul was well aware of his faults and failings, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he still encouraged people to follow him as he followed Christ. That didn't stop him going and saying, model your life on what you see me doing. So here's the challenge I have for you. The challenge I have for me is, am I someone, because this is what I think it really boils down to, am I someone who's really willing to live a life in such a way that you can follow my example? Am I willing to live my life in such a way that you can follow my example? That to me is ultimately the question that I have to ask myself, and I would encourage you to ask yourself. You see, the thing is, people follow one another's examples all of the time. Knowingly or unknowingly, people are following your example. So what is wrong with you going and making a declaration to someone, follow my example as I follow Christ. I'll tell you what's wrong with it. What's wrong with it is that means that you have to step up to the plate. That means that you have to live your life in a certain way that is honoring and pleasing to God. That means that you have to go and be someone who actually goes and practices what you preach, so that someone like Jesus can't come along and go and say, do what the Pharisees just say, but don't do what they do. What they're preaching is right, the way they're living is wrong. That's what he said. And so here's a Pharisee in the person of Paul who's going and saying, follow me as I follow Christ. That's a challenge. So what sort of a life am I presenting that I could actually go and say, yeah, it's okay for you to follow my example? You know, if we as Christians, followers of Christ, really thought about it, we should be able to say those words, because who knows, it just might make a huge impact in our families, in our society, in the way that everyone is operating, even within our churches. If we were going to turn around and say to one another, you know, follow me as I follow Christ. And so you're saying, look at my life. Take the areas of my life where I'm following Christ and emulate that. Copy that. But maybe then it would also help me if I was to make that statement. It would help you if you made that statement. That it would help us to weed out the areas of our lives that are not right in God's eyes. Think about it. We set the bar, the challenge for ourselves. Maybe we need to go and look into our learned behavior as Christians. So, who are you going to go and encourage this day to follow your example as you follow Christ? Let me leave it with you.